Hopeful, I'll take hopeful from Dr. Fauci. What about you, doctor? What is the earliest we could see a vaccine?
Well, I agree with the phraseology of cautious optimism. There's a lot to learn here, and we're just in the very beginning stages of it. I don't think we're going to see widespread use of a vaccine until probably late winter, spring of 2021. That's just the nature of how long it takes to do these trials. And with the shifting numbers of cases, it's going to cause some delays in that these studies are going to have to shift to different study sites in order to have enough cases to determine if the vaccine's protective. The other thing that I think we're going to likely be faced with is a rollout of several vaccines that have differing levels of efficacy and side effect profiles. So how will people choose among them? We've not really had that conversation yet.
Okay, Dr. Poland, let's just dig into that in a little bit more detail. The FDA started to publish some guidelines when it comes to these vaccines. My question is a straightforward one. Is an antibody response a signal of efficacy when it comes to a vaccine?
It really depends on the vaccine. So we do not have, and what you're proposing is called a correlate of protection. We do not yet have a correlate of protection for this disease. We believe that it will be neutralizing antibody, but we don't know that yet. And that's one of the basic fundamental things you have to figure out about the efficacy of a vaccine and its usefulness in a population.
There are so many vaccines, more than I ever knew, kind of out there and being tested, et cetera. Let's say that they all kind of turn out to be somewhat effective and we want to go ahead and make them all. That doesn't seem to be the problem, but the glass vials that they reside in are. Can you tell me sort of where the hurdle points are from an effective vaccine to getting it in my arm?
Yeah, the issue there is going to be the fact that we mostly have just-in-time inventory and manufacturing and similar distribution systems. So the question will be, and imagine if it takes 2 doses now, how are we going to distribute, let's say, 700 million doses in a timely manner in the U.S.? We've never done that before. With a disease that ravages the population every year, like influenza, at best, we get half of the highest risk people to take this vaccine. So we've got issues with distribution. We have issues with how we're going to allocate and prioritize vaccine. And we're going to have issues, as I mentioned, with explaining to the public the different types of vaccines and likely their differential efficacy and side effect profile.
Are you getting a sense at this point, Dr. Poland, of which types of vaccines you mentioned there are likely to prove to be the most effective? I've read a lot over the last few weeks about messenger RNA, and history is not on that route's side. We haven't actually seen a vaccine with a messenger RNA basis being approved, but a lot of kind of money and effort seems to be put down that route. Other types, other channels are being kind of explored as well. Do you have a sense of what is working and what is not at this stage?
Well, you raised some excellent points and some clear points. In fact, mRNA-based vaccine platforms have never yet been licensed. The Moderna trial is probably the most advanced of the mRNA candidates. We only have some mouse data and a press release in terms of what those phase 1 results showed. We also know that about 10%, 4 people in that trial had grade 3 or greater systemic adverse events. So we really need to see peer-reviewed details on that. We also have adenovirus vectored vaccines. The Oxford vaccine is probably the most advanced of that set of platforms. In that case, we do have some non-human primate, but not much human data. And in those monkey studies, it showed that there was just as much virus in the vaccinated and then challenged as the unvaccinated monkeys. So, we could be seeing a vaccine that might be somewhat more like flu vaccine, where it's moderately efficacious. It doesn't introduce sterilizing immunity, and that would be a good first-generation vaccine. It would not be the optimal vaccine.
Interesting point. So, taking that in mind, is there opportunity and necessity for all of these companies that are making these vaccines to work together to either mitigate that or help speed that along?
Yeah, definitely there's opportunity. In fact, the NIH has set up what I think is a model for how to do this, which is called the active trial. So the idea would be you get all of these manufacturers, the front runners, to do studies using a standardized protocol, using an independent data monitoring board, independent statisticians, so that you can actually make judgments about the quality of immunity induced at a head-to-head comparison basis, which is rarely done in vaccine trials. So that if they do this, if they carry this out, if it's successful, that will be a big leap in understanding the nature of these vaccines. But again, I caution, there's a lot to learn. It is simplistic and naive, the way I hear people thinking of, we'll have a vaccine or several vaccines like they're all the same, like they'll all have the same performance. That will not be the case. There will be important differences, very likely, between these candidates.
Dr. Poland, have you eaten in a restaurant yet? When do you expect to be eating in a restaurant? I guess what I'm really getting at is kind of when does the service sector have the opportunity to come back if what you are saying is true, that we won't see a vaccine until much later on this winter?
Yeah. No, I have not yet eaten in a restaurant. We have twice gotten takeout food, but I personally would not go into a crowded setting like that. I don't think the risk justifies it on a personal level. I think that's why we are seeing, with some of the early reopenings, that's why we're seeing surges in cases in some of the south and southwestern states. We know how to keep this suppressed. We know. It's worked. It's documented. If we have physical distancing, if we use hand sanitization, if we wear masks. The problem is we're not doing those things, and we're not doing them consistently. And that's what's actually having the adverse impact on the business sector. We know how to control this. We need to make the decision to do so.